All right, we are winding down. We have a few conversations left before we end this at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. And just a reminder, we're doing this to bring attention to World Homelessness Day. And we're trying to raise awareness and start conversations. My next guest is Jamie Van Leeuwen, and from one Dutch guy to another, it warms my heart to have another Dutch guy on the bench. But Jamie, as I was looking at the bio that they gave me on you and all the things that you've done, I was joking with my staff. I'm like, I think the best thing to do is to ask you to share a bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm a little bit nervous that I might be one of the last people you interview, that people might tune out. But this community is so incredibly special to me, Dennis, and I appreciate you guys taking this on and bringing light to this issue. It's so important. It's where my career started, was really working when I was doing my graduate work down in New Orleans and working with inner city heroin addicts, and then coming back here. My first real job was working at Urban Peak and figuring out what it meant to get young people off the streets and into housing. And so, from Urban Peak, that led to working for a mayor who genuinely cared about making sure that homelessness was a priority for his administration. And so John Hickenlooper took this issue on and never really stopped, and said that it's not only the right thing to do, but it's a smart thing to do. So I had the pleasure of working with him for 5 years as Mayor Hickenlooper, where we built 3,000 units of housing and figured out what it meant to get not just young people, but homeless families, men, women, and children off the streets and into housing. And so it's definitely been something that's been the core of the work that I've done since I started here. And so this community, in many ways, Dennis, the Denver Rescue Mission has raised me and has taught me that we all need to work together to make sure that every man, woman, and child has a place to sleep at night.
That's right. And it's funny you bring up Urban Peak, because Christina was on the bench with me last night, and she shared this hilarious story about applying 5 times and not getting hired before she got hired to be the CEO. And she said you were a part of her being hired as a CEO.
Yeah, she blames me for that. I mean, Urban Peak is what's a beautiful thing is when you're part of an organization, and when you leave that organization, it keeps getting stronger and better.
Yes.
It's what you're doing with the Denver Rescue Mission post Brad Miley, and I think that in the midst of a world where we tend to hear all the bad things that are happening and all the things that aren't working, the fact that you guys are having these conversations right now is a great example. There are things that are working. There are humans that are very committed to making sure that people have a place to stay, that people have access to meaningful treatment services, that they have access to education and jobs. And so I think we need to look at some of the leaders in our community and really make sure that we're surrounding them with the support they need, like the Denver Rescue Mission, to succeed.
I think you're right. And one of the things that I've been saying for a long time, but even in almost every one of these conversations, is I truly believe that homelessness is a solvable problem. We have the resources that we need as a country to solve this problem. What I wonder is if we have the collective will, right? So where government and business and the private sector and missions and churches and nonprofits all come together and say, we may have some differences, but we all have an important role to play in the healthcare system. And if we all could get together, and if we all could work together toward this one goal, I think we could solve this. I mean, what do you think when you hear that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think we're crazy to say that we can't. If we can get a drone to be able to take pictures of things at 30,000 miles away, we should be able to get a homeless person off the streets and into housing. What I really appreciate about the rescue mission and about the community here in general is that we're really committed not just to working on these issues, but also educating our young people. How do we get young people involved in the solution? That if we are going to do what you're saying about solving homelessness, it's not something that's going to happen just because the Denver Rescue Mission does it, or just because Urban Peak does it. It's going to happen because a community says that the values of our community are such that we don't want any man, woman, or child to have to sleep outside at night.
It's exactly right. And sometimes it blows my mind a little bit that is a debate. That shouldn't be a debate. We shouldn't want any man, woman, or child to sleep on the streets. Or frankly, shelter is a necessary part of the system, but it's not the goal,
Right.
and we shouldn't leave people in shelter for who knows how long. We need to get them to housing. So thinking through that, in your experience, what are the biggest barriers that prevent cities from scaling affordable housing?
Yeah, that's that's a great question. I'm worried if I do have the answer to it, then there's a lot of other folks who would probably tune in. I think it's complicated, and I think that the solutions that I've seen that have worked the best, the cities that I think make the most progress on these issues, is when you have collective leadership. That when you
Yes.
have cross-sector investment and engagement, and I don't see it happening in communities that don't have that. And we were very lucky, 20 years ago to have John Hickenlooper, who believed that the private sector, the nonprofit sector, the public sector can work together and should work together.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of the silver bullet to it. It's also making sure that people understand that it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, that this
Yes.
is not an
Yeah.
easy fix, and how you design services for homeless youth, like Christina's doing over at Urban
Right.
Peak, looks a lot different than the adult chronically homeless male population that you or the Coalition for the Homeless are trying to serve and
Right.
connect with. And so in a time where I think we're getting more and more polarized, there's never been a more and more important time if we're going to really address the issue of homelessness that we work together, that we've got to come back to the table, that this is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. This
That's
is a community issue.
It is a community issue.
And if we don't solve homelessness, then we're not only taking away the opportunity for people to thrive, but we're also adding an enormous amount of expense to our community that we don't need to if we house people and give them the right access to services.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so you've worked in your career domestically, but also internationally on poverty alleviation. What lessons from your work internationally do you think that we could learn to better approach solutions and housing in the United States?
It's a great question, and I think not enough organizations ask those questions. The Global Livingston Institute was an organization that I founded over 15 years ago, and it's rooted in the principles of listen and think before you act. And it was founded when I started building that organization out in Uganda and Rwanda. It was a lot. It was heavily influenced by the work that I did here in Denver, and I think that one of the things that the Denver Rescue Mission does well, it's what you're doing right now, is really goes and the communities where you work, you have to listen and engage with those communities. And so I think internationally, what you see is a lot of nonprofits or people coming in and saying, here's what you could do to make your community better. Communities don't need that. Communities need you to go and listen and think with them about, they know what they need to make their community better. We need to do a better job of asking and listening to those communities about what they need and finding out what it's going to take for them to get off, address the issues that they need to address. And I think on homelessness, one of the things that both Hickenlooper and Roxanne White, who is very much the architect behind the work we did around homelessness, really focused on was making sure that if we're going to build really good homeless services for people in the community, you have to have homeless people at the table designing those services and being a part of them. And sometimes I think we try to fix things and do things without engaging the people or the communities that we're serving. And so that's been the biggest piece for me on the international side of things, is if you want to do international work, go do it, but go do it in partnership with the communities that you're wanting to serve. And I think you do that in Uganda, and I think we need to do that here in Denver.
Yeah, I agree, and I was thinking, and you touched on it too, that everything that you were saying about going into a community and asking questions and listening, that's exactly how we should be interacting with the people experiencing homelessness, right? Because I don't have any lived experience in homelessness. For me to sort of come in, especially early on in my career, and say, well, this is what you need. Right. Well, that approach rarely ever works in any setting. Right. But how much better to go, let's sit down. Tell me your story. Right. Tell me, how did you get here? What do you think you need to walk and leave homelessness? And to have those discussions and to be quick to listen and maybe slow to speak sometimes.
Well, that's kind of what you guys are doing here today, right?
Yeah, we're trying.
And what people are trying to do around the country is how do we engage folks? And again, the problems or the issue doesn't get solved by targeting or focusing on one organization or one person. It's going to get you have to have your business community and your business leaders, and we have to listen to them and hear what they have to say and what do they need. What do our nonprofits need to thrive, and what do the homeless need to be able to make that transition off
exactly.
the streets.
Yeah. Okay, so Build Strong Foundation focuses on increasing access to affordable housing. What are some innovative housing models or partnerships that have shown the most promise in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. I work. I have the pleasure of working for another community leader, Pat Hamill, who was the founder of Oakwood Homes and understands how important a home is to making a community thrive. And so the Build Strong Foundation, one of the core programs of the Build Strong Foundation is the Build Strong Academy that's working on workforce training in the construction trades to get people not only the skills they need to succeed, but then the jobs that they need to thrive. And so I think that, as we talk about homelessness and the conversations and the dialogues you're having, again, it's a challenging issue because it's not just about housing, which is an important part of it. It's not just about treatment and mental health and substance abuse services, but it's about jobs. And if you want somebody to not be homeless, they've got to be able to pay their rent and be able to take care of their family. And what people, I think the stereotype that's out there is people have this notion that it's this lazy, crazy group of humans, and they're not lazy or crazy. They really want to work.
They do.
If you give them the skills they need, they'll go to. Most people want to go and work and have a way to contribute. And so, what's exciting about Build Strong Academy is that we're very committed to making sure that people have skills that they need to be in good paying jobs so that they can take care of their family. We're starting to look a lot more at the affordable housing issues now. We have a housing consortium that's been supported by the governor's office, by McKinsey Consulting has engaged with it, and about 65 different community leaders who understand affordable housing are at the table saying, what are 2 or 3 things that we could be doing collectively to start addressing the affordable housing issue? And that's a whole nother complicated topic that we've got to take on. And I think that what's so important is acknowledging what does the Denver Rescue Mission do well, what does Build Strong do well, what does the governor's office do well, and then figuring out how do all of those then work collectively to make the community stronger and healthier.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. So here's a question. What gives you the most life in the work that you're doing?
Hands down, I mean, the young generation right now, I love, we hired 8 paid interns this summer to work on community development initiatives and to work on our affordable housing work around the state. We modeled it after some work that I'd done at Emerson Collective on a national level. And I got to tell you, like, if you want to kind of change your perception on if you're feeling gloomy or discouraged, if we start engaging young people and turn them loose and give them something to work on, they are ready to go. This is a generation that is extremely smart, extremely passionate, and deeply cares about community. And so we have to be investing in young people. We have to start giving them more leadership roles and decision-making roles. And they need to help us solve these issues because they are the next generation. They're going to be the ones sitting on this bench in 20 years having these conversations. And so I get excited about that. I think that we have a very turbulent, challenging time ahead of us. I also think that we'll rise to the occasion. I think there's leaders like you in the community that are committed to doing that, but I also think that we have to really start raising up the voice of young leaders and making sure that our next round of public sector leaders are equipped with the skills and understanding and knowledge of the issues that they're going to need to succeed.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. I told a couple other guests, we have almost 400 employees here, and the vast majority of them are, they're 35 and under, and the energy, the passion, the enthusiasm, the brilliance, and their commitment is just, it's unmeasured. And, for me, in getting to the probably latter stages of my career, I start looking at them and going, I really want to pour into them, because I'm not going to be here forever. I shouldn't be here forever. And in some ways, I want them to go much farther than we were even able to go.
Well, and also they know how to fix things that we don't.
Yeah,
they understand technology and how to communicate in ways that we don't. They understand how to create systems and access services in ways that we don't. And so the more we can be investing in the next generation of leaders, I think is really important right now.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. So you've touched on it a couple of times, and I know our time is getting down here, but speak, if you would, to just the importance of collaboration between organizations.
Yeah, my students, anybody who takes any of the classes that I teach with the University of Colorado Denver, know that I talk about Thomas Merton all the time, and he talks about the importance of relationships, and at the end of the day, it's the value of personal relationships that saves everything, and we have to change our discourse right now. And collaboration is not going to happen by us calling each other names and tweeting out terrible things. We should disagree with each other. And if you and I disagree with each other, you should be able to call me out and say, I think you're wrong. The way we're treating each other right now and talking to each other is not going to foster collaboration. It is crazy to me that in 2025, some of the names that we call each other on social media and some of the things that we do, it's never gonna, we have complex issues that we've got to solve. Homelessness, education, mental health. We have a new advent of AI. We've got to all be at the table together. We should disagree. If everybody agrees, it's not gonna get fixed.
We get better when we disagree and come together and learn from each
other.
other.
But collaboration is going to happen over having cups of coffee, and not just having a cup of coffee with the people that we agree with or that we respect. It's going to be the people who we disagree with the most, sitting down and being like, where are you coming from on this? Because I don't get it. And we've got to start doing that. We've got to bring down the heated discourse to a DEFCON 5, because the way we're doing it right now is not going to work.
No, it's not. And I think that starts with looking at that person across the table from you that might be very, very different than you in who knows, a myriad of ways, but seeing the inherent value and dignity in that person, and because of that, respecting them in their position. Don't have to agree, but respecting them in their position, and then, to your point, talking and learning from one another.
Totally agree.
Well, this was amazing, and our time went way, way, way too fast. But I hope that this becomes, at least for you and I, a conversation that can continue and that we'll have more of. And I'm just so grateful for all the work that you do, for your perspective, and that you would take time out of your day and come join me on the bench.
Well, I was so excited about you being the CEO of the Denver Rescue Mission. I had a note that I wanted to meet you, and so what better way to do it than in a live interview so that we can get to know each other. So thank you for what you're doing to raise the issue, and for all the people who are tuning into this. I think it's an important conversation.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. All right, we are going to play a video of an interview conversation with District Attorney John Walsh. And then after that, we have one final live conversation on the bench with one of our recent program graduates. I promise you, you do not want to miss that. And then we will wrap up our time for the conversations on the bench. And after that, I'm going to go take a nap. So thank you, and we'll be right back with you.